Welcome to OkState Daily. Casey Porter here, joined by Chase Wiska, as I am each and every Sunday morning. Coach, it's a glorious morning. You have a huge game ahead on the horizon next week against Utah. Cowboys went into Tulsa, T-Town yesterday, took care of business, 45-10. If there was ever a way that a team could dominate a game and come out of the game with a whole lot of question marks like Oklahoma State did yesterday, I think yesterday would be that day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you look at first off, let's start positives. Alan Bowman played his butt off. He played really, really well. I think that's the best that I've seen him play since he's been in an Oklahoma State uniform. He
24 for 31, 396, 5 touches, and 1 interception.
Yeah, I mean, really consistent. And in that last interception, I don't really think a whole lot about it. I think he just misread a coverage or something like that. But like I said, I think that's the best that I've seen him play since he's been at Oklahoma State. The receivers, I think, played really well. It was cool to see Brandon Presley get his touchdown to the Colin Oliver celebration and stuff like that. That was really cool. My main concern is the O-line's run blocking, not pass blocking, but run blocking. Because what they've done in the pass blocking game has been really impressive. They haven't given up a sack all season, I don't think. They've given him a lot of time to throw, and I think you can start to see that come out in his play. He seems really comfortable, and he's not worried about getting hit, and he's becoming more consistent, it seems like, each week. The first week against North Dakota State, I thought he did not look good at all. Arkansas, I don't think he looked very good in the first half. The second half, he looked a little bit better, and then Tulsa. Granted, it was Tulsa, and the competition wasn't near as close as what it was the 2 weeks prior, but he looked a lot better than he did the first 2 weeks. So I think that's definitely a positive.
Alan Bowman did look good yesterday, a lot of that, and I think it all ties into what you're talking about with the offensive line. I'll push back a little bit about the offensive line. First of all, I think pass blocking is harder than run blocking, so I think definitely all the skills there. And plus, when you look at last year, Ollie Gordon was a Doak Walker Award winner. And, after about week 3, the Cowboys were maybe one of the best rushing teams in all the United States of America. So this is an offensive line that returned everybody from a line that blocked for the Doak Walker Award winner last year. They didn't forget how to run block. I think there's a little bit of a few things going on. I think, number one, Oklahoma State's a little bit more vanilla than maybe they would be. You saw the counter pitch there on the 4th down play where I believe it was Valahi scored on the pitch. It may have been Howland. I can't remember at that point of the game. But there's you could do that. The gap scheme where you're just pulling guys here and there out of the diamond or out of different formations. I think there's some things you can do that aren't quite as vanilla maybe as what the Cowboys are doing right now. And then I'll say it point blank, I think there are times to where Ollie Gordon is running like he's a little bit nicked up. I don't think he's running as hard and busting through the line of scrimmage and getting the 7 or 8, maybe 9 yards that he got last year, and he's settling for like 1 or 2. And I'm like, that didn't look like Ollie Gordon to me. So I think it's a myriad of things.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that that may be a part of it because there is a big point of emphasis on him staying healthy. So I don't know if that goes into his head or if they are keeping things a little bit more vanilla, if you will, in the run game, at least until they start getting into Big 12 play. I think that I don't really think they've had to bring out much outside of Arkansas. To where they had to show a whole bunch on offense. But I go back to what Coach Gundy said, and he's like, we're not really trying to hide anything. So I wonder what that's going to look like. But at times, he's not hiding from anybody anymore. After what he did last year, there's no, who's number 0? He looks good, he's big, he's fast. Hey, that's Ollie Gordon, and we're going to stop him. And that's been every team's scheme. Through the first 3 games this year, they're having 6.5, 7 guys, 8 guys in the box saying that they're going to make Alan Bowman beat them. And rightfully so. I think that Ollie Gordon is much more impactful and can have those bigger plays than what people think Alan Bowman can. But you saw a little tidbit of what Alan Bowman could do yesterday when he's comfortable and everything. So I'm curious to see how the rest of the season goes, and especially even next week, because the schemes and stuff like that are going to be different. And I think that's going to be the best competition that Oklahoma State's seen so far.
Yeah, Oklahoma State, I believe, had 6, maybe 7 plays yesterday that were over 20 yards. So the good thing about that yesterday is Oklahoma State had an offense that, to me, it was like, oh, you want to stop Ollie, huh? Well, watch this. And it was just one big play after the other. And it almost was counterproductive for Tulsa to try to play Ollie Gordon up the middle because their secondary members, they're the corners and their safeties. I mean, bless their heart. I mean, it's talking with Bruce Howard. I mean, it's like transfer here. It's just kind of throwing a lineup together there. Kevin Wilson's in his second year there. Last year was not a good year whatsoever defensively for Tulsa. So they're kind of in a transition and a crossroads there. So the talent level was not good, in my opinion, at the secondary level. So for Tulsa to play a defensive style that forces Oklahoma State to throw to their secondary and expose their secondary just was not a good matchup for them whatsoever. And to Oklahoma State's credit, they did it. And it wasn't just, hey, we threw the little slant to Deshaun Stribling. Hey, we threw the little bubbles to Brennan Presley. Oklahoma State stretched the field. They had big plays. They had short plays. They had third down plays. They had every play in the book imaginable to the receivers. Oklahoma State had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different guys catch passes yesterday. So I think the biggest positive I came out of it was, okay, you want to stop Ollie Gordon, fine. That's not necessarily a plus positive for you defensively.
Yeah, and one thing that I would like to see, and you saw a little bit of it every now and then in these first couple games, is I think they can get Ollie Gordon involved in the pass game a little bit more than what they have, and maybe that's something they're waiting to do until Utah, because he's a good receiving back. And I think once you allow him,
and it gets him in space.
Yeah, and he's a hard guy to tackle in space. But another statistic that I saw yesterday, I don't know if it was just after halftime, but they were showing kind of all these stats, and I've never seen this one before, but they were showing how many rush attempts that he had up the middle, how many rush attempts he had to the left side, how many rush attempts he had to the right side, and then the yards gained. And one thing that caught my eye was he had 0 rush attempts to the right side.
Yeah, I was going to say left every time, yeah.
And maybe that has something to do with Jake Springfield being out. Maybe it doesn't, I'm not sure. But one thing that I think that they could do to help out that run scheme just a little bit more is use all 3 different lanes. If you're always going left, it's pretty easy for the defense to add that second guy on their right side. And then vice versa, if you're always going up the middle, they can stack in the middle. And if you're always going right, they can stack on the left. But I don't know. I'm curious to see what that looks like. But I'd never seen that stat before, and I thought it was kind of interesting.
I think one thing that they did a good job of at times last year that they could add back into it is give a separate flow read off of the handoff to Ollie. So if you're going to hand the ball off, say, to Ollie over tackle to the right side, then fake a handoff to Brennan Presley or Gavin Freeman, get back to the left. That way, at least you get the defense, some of the defense having to honor that rocket play, at least maybe a safety, an outside linebacker, maybe that half player. Maybe you motion to that, when we say half player, that player that's outnumbering the offense by a half inside the box, and he's half run, half pass. Run that rocket motion right at that half player, where that half player has to honor that motion and then hand the ball off to Ollie Gordon. So you're giving 2 separate flow reads on one play, so the defense can't, like you just said a minute ago, just stack up the box to whatever specific spot they think you're going to run it to.
Yeah, I think that would work big time. And I think it was encouraging to see that many guys have that many receptions and that many receiving. I mean, they had 2 receivers over 100 yards. Deshaun Stribling almost had 200 yards receiving. He had 174. Or Cetron, I'm sorry, had 110 on 3 receptions. So that's big time, and it was good to see those guys come back and have big games, because I think that going into this heavy load of Big 12 teams that are going to be talented, as in Utah and Kansas State, they're going to have every single one of these guys. And they're going to, I think that it helped them showing on film that, hey, all of these guys can make plays. So you can't key on just a Brennan Presley or just a Rashad Owens or just an Ollie Gordon. But you're going to have to really account for the whole offense. And I think that that's going to really help open up the playbook and the play calling. And I think that you're going to see a lot more probably big plays in the run game than you have seen in the first 3 games.
This is going to sound weird because Alan Bowman was simply fantastic yesterday. We went over his numbers. 24 for 31, 396, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, a long of 78, was not sacked. He hit 11 different receivers. So it was a fantastic day. So this is going to sound definitely nitpicky, and I understand that. But Oklahoma State's struggling to run the ball, right? So I think an extension of your running game are some of those bubbles to Brennan Presley, some of those quicks on the outside, maybe those real quick slants. Those are quasi-run games because they're meant to get you 4, 5, 6 yards and keep the offense on schedule, which is exactly what a rush game is supposed to do. So Gavin Freeman, 2 catches yesterday, 5 yards. I do think Oklahoma State is underutilizing what Gavin Freeman could do for this offense. I think you can do a lot of the same things Brennan Presley can do, and it kind of be an extension to your running game until you get that part of it figured out.
I would agree with that. And, maybe it's something that has to have to do with him still trying to get comfortable with the scheme and still understanding the offense because he hasn't been there for very long. That's still not a whole lot of time to learn this full offense. You saw it all through last year with Alan Bowman. I mean, I think there were times that there were still busted plays and he was still a little confused in the offense 8 or 9 games into the season, and that's your quarterback. So I can't even, receiver is probably a little bit easier because you don't have to really know what everybody's doing but what you're doing. But you do have to know all the audibles and you have to know all this, all the language and the mechanics and things like that. So playing devil's advocate there, maybe that's why they're underutilizing him, if you will. But I see him really as a second Brennan Presley, probably not as polished and not as experienced or anything like that. But I think if you look at going into next year, he's going to be a Brennan Presley because he has the speed and he has. I think they're the exact same size. I think Brennan Presley's maybe a little bit heavier. But outside of that, I mean, they're spitting images of each other.
Yeah, they are.
So maybe, and I don't, obviously we don't go to practice or anything like that, but I'm curious to see how much Brennan Presley and Gavin Freeman are working together. I'm sure that's, playing some kind of role and some kind of factor into it because I think that when you have an experienced guy like that working with not necessarily a young guy, but a guy that's fresh into the system, I think that you'll see more of him used down the line. And then especially going into next year, he's going to be their guy. So
I'll say this, and this is just my opinion, and this is not meant to be a dig or it's not meant to be anything like that towards anybody, but I do think Braylon Presley made a mistake transferring to Tulsa. I think he would have had a very nice career at Oklahoma State and been a receiver that could have helped the team win, the possibility of multiple Big 12 championships. So Brennan Presley yesterday, not an overwhelming day whatsoever for Tulsa, but it was a Tulsa offense. I'll tell you what, Chase, when the first string defense for Oklahoma State was in, Tulsa, they got on Oklahoma State's side of the field 6 out of their 9 possessions. That comes straight from Dave Hunziker. I listened to him basically the entire broadcast yesterday. And Dave brought up a great point, and I think he is exactly right. I think if you watch O-State Daily much, or if you know me at all, you know that I am extremely high on the savant nature of Brian Nardo to be able to figure out the X and O's really fast. And so because of that, Oklahoma State's a really good blitz team. So whenever you get inside the 30, Oklahoma State starts blitzing, and they start shutting things down. So I think it's going to be a little bit of bend but don't break, maybe more than Oklahoma State fans want. But because Oklahoma State blitzes so well, they've done a good job once the other team has approached Oklahoma State's goal line.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that the biggest red flag and the biggest concern for me in terms of the defense is the secondary. I think that they give up a lot of big plays, and I don't know if it's misreads. I don't know if they're just not covering very well. It's hard for me to sit back and not hear a play call and know what they're supposed to be doing and try to guess. Right. One thing that I did see yesterday specifically was Kendall Daniels covering somebody. I don't know. He's playing linebacker, and he was covering somebody down the field. and made a phenomenal play, put his hand up, knocked the ball down. I think that maybe using him in coverage a little bit more. I don't know how much they're doing right now, but that may be helping. That may be a factor, but they've also got to find a way, especially without Colin Oliver, to get pressure on the quarterback, because you did not see as much pressure on the quarterback as you had the past 2 weeks. And even last week against what I thought was a pretty decent Arkansas team, in that second half, they got a lot of pressure on the quarterback. They didn't get a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback, in my opinion, against Tulsa, or not, at least not as much as they should.
Not in the first half, yeah. I think in the second half they dialed him up pretty good, because the thing about Kirk Francis, who was the quarterback for Tulsa, I got to see him quite a bit when he was at Metro Christian. I don't think he ever got even hit at Metro Christian. I think he stayed upright every single play through for like 660 some odd yards in a state finals game. Kirk Francis is a young man at Tulsa that has really big time arm talent, but if you heat him up, it's not something that he's really comfortable with, because it's never something he's had to deal with. And I think once Oklahoma State started heating him up a little bit in the second half, it was going to be a tough day for him. And then they end up having to play. I know when I talked to Bruce, he'd mentioned that probably all three quarterbacks were going to play for Tulsa. But I'll say a little bit, I don't know if you want to say disappointing, but early on in the game, Anthony Watkins had a lot of success running the ball against Oklahoma State's defense. That really surprised me.
Yeah, the defense as a whole right now is a little shaky, and I don't want to be super negative, because they've won 3 games, and they did hold Tulsa to 10 points, but if you go back to last week and you play an okay Arkansas, a pretty decent Arkansas team, I would say. I mean, they had over 600 yards of offense, and half of them were on the ground, half of them were through the air, if I'm not mistaken. So I wonder what Utah is going to come in and look like with a veteran quarterback, an experienced quarterback, and then just a good, solid team as a whole. I do think Oklahoma State is more talented. However, Utah's coming into the Big 12 with something to prove. And there's a lot of people that haven't picked as their favorite for whatever the reason. I didn't watch a whole lot of Pac-12 football last year, nor did I watch a lot of Utah, period. But what I do remember of them is, they were a pretty sound team, and their quarterback in Cam Rising is really good. So if he's healthy and if he comes back and plays next week, which I think he will, considering the magnitude of the game, this could have playoff contention hopes or whatever, and they could come into play. So this is a must-win for both teams. So I'm curious to see, kind of what Oklahoma State's defense looks like against that kind of offense.
Yeah. I think Oklahoma State will match up well. I think from a physical perspective, physical stature, I think both teams are going to be just absolutely almost identical. We'll see exactly how healthy Cam Rising is. I know yesterday against Utah State, he did not play, and Utah struggled with Utah State for a good while. They opened it up there about halfway through the third quarter and went ahead and ran off with that game. But this Oklahoma State defense, to me, I think part of it is the complementary football that we saw Oklahoma State play so well at the end of last year, where the offense and defense are playing off of each other. There just seems to be none of that right now, because the offense is either not running the ball and going 3 and out, or having frustrating series, and the defense is right back on the field, or the offense is, especially yesterday, they're throwing it to Des Stribling or Rashad Owens, and they're chunking out 50-yard plays, and then the defense is right back on the field. So last year, what really made Oklahoma State so good, they were like an anaconda snake. They kind of had that effect to it, because as they ran the ball, it seemed like they had the ball the whole game, and as the game went on, Oklahoma State just squeezed the life out of the other team. I just don't see that effect from this team this year yet.
Yeah, and I think it's because you don't have much of a running game right now, honestly. Right. And that's concerning, but it's also, I go back to last year. It took them 3 or 4, really 4 games to really figure out what they were doing, to be honest with you. And obviously, Ollie's getting a lot more touches right now, and Bowman's playing a lot more snaps than he was the first 3 games last year. But I'm not in a panic mode yet, because it did take them 3 games to really figure out what was going on. And they played a pretty decent non-conference schedule. Minus Tulsa, I thought Tulsa kind of sucked. I'm going to be honest with you. They were not very good. I think North Dakota State would have ran circles around Tulsa, but that's my personal opinion. So this was kind of a good game to kind of elevate, if guys are feeling a little bit down, elevate that and make them feel a little bit better, especially in Alan Bowman coming off. He needs to go into Utah with a lot of confidence and come off of a high note, which I think he did, which is definitely beneficial. So I'm, like I said, I'm not in panic mode yet, but I'm curious to see, what it looks like next week.
Me too. I'd be honest with you. I'm not. I can get kind of negative towards Oklahoma State because I'm just such a diehard, just rabid OSU fan. My emotions sometimes get the best of me. There's no doubt about that. But this isn't an emotional opinion. This is just kind of the way I've felt over time. Is I'm a little bit worried about this year's team in terms of there's just things that have to get fixed and have to get changed and have to be different. If Oklahoma State's going to beat, if they're going to beat Utah, if they're going to go in and beat the Avery Johnson-led K-State team, if they're going to go in and beat Baylor on the road, and even BYU on the road. BYU's, hey, Retzlaff, watched him last night. You got to remember that Retzlaff, who played quarterback for BYU, he was a transfer last year and just figuring things out and making too many mistakes because he hadn't figured it out yet. That dude's really, really good. That game at BYU is going to be so hard for Oklahoma State to win. And then at Baylor, at TCU, those kinds of deals. For Oklahoma State to play that kind of a gauntlet of a schedule and win all of them, or maybe win all of them but one, which puts you in the Big 12 championship game, kind of like you did last year. I'm a little bit more discouraged this morning coming off of yesterday's win. Talk me off this ledge, Chase, than I am encouraged.
I wish I could, but I'm kind of right there with you. It's funny that we're complaining about a team that's won 3 games, but at the same time, I think this is the toughest Big 12 schedule that Oklahoma State's played in a little while. And you obviously you don't have the OU and you don't have the Texas, which are, in my opinion, probably they are scarier than Utah and Kansas State. But if you look at things overall, teams kind of even out. And I think that has a lot to do with the transfer portal and it has a lot to do with the NIL money. There's going to be a lot of close games that you probably are like, probably shouldn't be very close. But with the transfer portal and with the access to the NIL money, it really is going to start to kind of, in my opinion, even out the competition a little bit, and you're still going to have your top dogs with the guys with a lot of money, as in Ohio State, Alabama, Texas. Texas is really good. Mm-hmm. But I think once you get to teams that don't have as much access to NIL money and stuff like that, you're really going to see evening out in terms of level of play. So it's a little scary because I just haven't seen what I thought I was going to see yet this year. Which was just an explosive offense and a defense that is going into year 2 of their defensive coordinator with a lot of returning starters. I'd have thought to see a little bit more comfortableness and a little bit more of we've been there and done that kind of deal. I didn't
think no matter what Tulsa did, I didn't think they could stop Ollie Gordon. I mean, sorry, especially after Oklahoma State started throwing them. I just didn't see that.
No, I didn't either, and I don't want to pick on the O-line, but I also, if you look, and I understand that schematics are different now, especially going against Oklahoma State in terms of stopping the run, but if you can't block a Tulsa, how the heck are you going to block a Utah? And if you can't figure out a way to get the ball moving on the ground against the Tulsa, granted he did go for over 100 against North Dakota State, but on a lot more carries than what was desired. I don't know. That's my only explanation. Is they've got to figure out and sure, if they load the box, then by all means throw the football. But there's still got to be some kind of rushing attack because once teams start to bail out and it looks like they've got 7 or 8 in the box and then they start to bail out and play the pass, then you're screwed. Just quite honestly, you're in trouble. Or what
if Utah can play the run with 5.5 instead of 6.5?
Yeah.
And now they can drop that extra guy into the secondary and beef up their coverage because Oklahoma State's not very good in the run game. Right now we're saying 6.5, 7, maybe sometimes 8 men in the box. which that's true on some downs, not necessarily true on every down.
Right.
But what if you, like I said, what if Utah only has to use 5.5 because your run game's just not very good? So kind of where I'm getting at, I'm really worried about this team's ability to be able to generate a rush on the quarterback without blitzing. I'm worried about this team's ability in the pass game to minimize big plays, and I'm worried about this team's ability to be able to run the football on offense. Those aren't small concerns, in my opinion. I hate to be kind of this negative tone, and we'll finish this up with some positivity as we move on. But those aren't small issues in my mind.
No, they're not. And you know, I think some of it has to do with they've got to figure out ways to run the ball with somebody else other than Ollie Gordon too.
Which Trent Howland looked good yesterday. I think he is squarely your number 2 back.
Yeah, Sesi Valahi is just too little, in my opinion. He's fast, but he doesn't
not very explosive. That kind of.
He doesn't gain a whole lot of yards, and with the struggling offensive line in terms of run blocking right now, you can't afford a small back that's just super fast. You really can't.
I agree.
But what you can do, and if you want to use that small back and things like that, is use Gavin Freeman and use Brennan Presley to get him on the edge.
That is exactly my point. I am 1,000% in that camp. 1,000%. Yes.
Once you show 2 run threats, because you can't show a second run threat with your quarterback because Alan Bowman is not a runner, and that's not a secret. I mean, he's a big old white dude. I mean, he's not a very fast guy. He can throw it all right, but you don't have the luxury of running what you did with Spencer Sanders, where they have to account for running back and quarterback. Now you're going to have to figure out a way for the defense to account for a Brennan Presley or a Gavin Freeman and an Ollie Gordon. Because once you have 2 run threats, it makes it a little bit more difficult to stop the run, as opposed to, hey, we're going to key on number 0. And that's solely what 3 teams have done so far this year. And I'm hoping that you see a little bit more creativity in terms of play calling against Utah, because if there's not, Ollie Gordon's might rush for 25 yards, and Alan Bowman's going to have to throw for 400 for them to win.
It's the old Lot Mac pop rocket offense, man. You get that fly sweep motion going on every play, and then you either hand it to him or you keep the ball and you get right back up underneath on some kind of power play or inside zone or something. I think Oklahoma State could at least have that package in there. And like you said, it would give the defense at least a couple of different flow reads, because your quarterback can't do this at one point. And then also, hey, there's nothing to say if you fake that, say, jet sweep motion to Freeman or Presley, they can still go out for a pass. They can still catch all the bubbles they've been catching and the quicks. They can run whatever route that they want to run. I mean, that's not going to keep them from doing that either. So I think that would be a great idea. But, hey, well, let's get back to some more positive aspects of yesterday's game. Obviously, if the other team does load the box, what you got to do is, like Andy said, don't beat your head up against the wall. You got to throw the ball. Oklahoma State did a very good job of that. So I thought Casey Dunn did a very good job of just kind of taking what the defense gave him. And then I thought Trent Howland, if he can just give Oklahoma State 50 yards a game, I've said this every single week, 50 yards a game is all we need out of the backup running back, which he did yesterday with 54 yards on 10 carries, over 5 yards a carry for him. That would be a huge deal for this offense. Yeah,
and I don't want to pick on Valahi, but I just when they ran him out the first time as the backup running back, I was a little confused, because I was like, I kind of like what they're doing, that you got the small back, but the more that I thought about it, I'm like, you have 2 more small backs and wide receiver bodies that you can use.
Exactly.
As opposed to just a little running back. And the only other little running back that I've seen have a lot of success, and especially in the Big 12, is Deuce Vaughn. I mean, that guy was a freak.
I thought Jaden Nixon was a good change up last year. He made some really nice plays. I
wouldn't consider him small. I mean, if you compare him to Sesi Valahi is tiny. I mean, he's little. But I agree. I do agree with you there. But like I said, if you find a way to get Brennan Presley the ball or Gavin Freeman the ball on a rush, whether that be a jet sweep or whether that be a fake counter and a pitch, when the receiver goes behind, you fake the dive or whatever to Ollie, and you pitch it out to Gavin Freeman or Brennan Presley. I mean, it's going to open up so much more.
He scored on a rocket play against Arkansas on 3rd and goal.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So let's do a little bit more. You know, and I don't know if they take that into consideration, but they've got to figure out a way to I guess run to the right side with Ollie Gordon, because it seems like when you go back, and I might go back and watch games this week and just see what it looks like, but I don't recall Ollie running to the right side a whole bunch, and I don't know why that is. And that's that's 3 weeks of football games.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Utah comes in. We'll see how healthy Cam Rising is. I think this is going to be a fantastic game, going to be a whole lot of fun. I think another thing that I'm going to enjoy is it not being an 11 o'clock game. I went to the game in Tulsa yesterday, and driving all the way, I live 8 miles west of Guthrie, getting up and go, hey, no problem whatsoever. But I mean, I do it every day and twice on Sundays. But it would have been a lot funner if it was at 2 o'clock instead of 11 o'clock or even 6 o'clock and that kind of thing. So it'll be fun not having an 11 o'clock game. Do we know what time that kickoff is next week?
It's 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, yeah. That's going to be the perfect time of day. So it's going to be super exciting and can't wait. I wish we could almost fast forward to Saturday right now, because it's going to be one of those glorious Saturdays at Boone Pickens Stadium, and there is no place on earth that puts off a better college football atmosphere. I've been to every one of them in the Big 12. I haven't been to all the SEC ones, but I've probably been in 90% of them. And yes, some of them are bigger. None of them are better atmospheres than Boone Pickens. When the students are there and the paddles are going and you got all the smoke and the fireworks and people are fired up, it's the best atmosphere in college football.
Yeah, and you can go and watch YouTube videos of people that kind of do this for not necessarily a career, but they're content creators. They go around to all kinds of different college football atmospheres and kind of rank them and stuff like that. And one thing that they first say when they kind of get to Boone Pickens is, this place is tiny. It's kind of underwhelming.
It's cozy.
And
it's like a AA baseball park. It's like it's the perfect kind of quaint, cozy, like the Bull Durham effect.
Yeah, and then they'll video some stuff during the game and stuff like that. And then after the game, it never fails that it's like, God, the place is really freaking loud, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah. And especially with holding 55,000 people, whatever it is, it gets really freaking loud in there. And you go back to Big 12 Media Day when they're asking guys that have played in the Big 12 for a little bit, where's the toughest place to play? Stillwater is always one of those places that they mention. It never fails. And if you go back, and I bet if you ask Oklahoma after this year, I bet one of the most hostile environments that guys that have played at Boone Pickens last year, and you go to LSU, I'm not saying that it's going to be loud or anything. I've never been to LSU, so I have no idea. But I would guarantee you.
Another one.
Yeah, and they hold over 100,000 people. But, it's double the size of Boone Pickens. But, I would still bet that they would say that Stillwater is a really tough place to play, because the fans are on top of you with the way that it's set up. And I've been close enough to hear some things that people say to the opposing side.
Well, the style of football for OSU, if you're the other team too, when you combine, it's a day of hell for the other team.
Well, you're trying to relay calls. It's really loud with the upbeat, the fast-paced offense. Good luck, and even on stupid things such as snap counts. They've got to figure out a way to get a snap count called while being able to hear it, which I think is really unique, and it's really cool for this small of a stadium to have that big of an impact.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
It is. I love it. It's one of my favorite 3.5 hours of the year whenever I get to spend it sitting in Boone Pickens Stadium and enjoying some Oklahoma State football. But hey, Chase, this has been a lot of fun. Oklahoma State, biggest part of it, when I talked to Kai, he point blank said, I hear people say, hey, it was a bad win. He said, I've been in the trenches. I put that Oklahoma State uniform on. There is no such thing as a bad win. So 3-0 is 3-0.
Yeah, absolutely. And just go 1-0 every week. You're going to be where you want to be at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I know that sounds cliche, but it is absolutely 100% true. So, Chase, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, everybody out there, for tuning in. And until next time, go Pokes.